Well, hello, everyone. I am Shamika. This is my husband, Michael. We're with the Michael L. Johnson Jr. Foundation, and we are totally excited to have this firecracker right here, this fire starter, this mover, this shaker, Miss Camille Joy. We are so thrilled to have you here today and have you really talk about yourself as a mom and having Maison selected as a recipient of a Sunshine's Christmas from the Michael L. Johnson Jr. Foundation. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much. We are so honored. I had his hat on him last night. I said, we gotta take a picture. You know he wouldn't stay still, but we'll get it for you.
No problem. Wonderful, wonderful. So please tell us a little about your little superhero, Maison. Tell us about Maison.
Yes. Mason, his name is Mason King, and he was born with congenital heart disease. In my womb, I knew that I would be carrying a disabled child. So quickly after they told us at our 20-week ultrasound that he had several heart defects, they asked, well, would you like to terminate the pregnancy? And we were like, no, how insensitive is that? So we decided we would move forward and of course have our child. This is my first child with my husband. And so although I have other children, and so does he. And Mason was born with congenital heart disease. On day 5, he had heart surgery to correct the coarctation in his aortic valve. At 5 months, he needed a balloon catheter to reopen that same space because it was beginning to narrow again. And then at 18 months, he had open heart surgery. So way before autism, he'd become a little fighter and, a warrior recovering from that alone. And, he has several heart defects. So we always have to go back to the doctors every 3 to 6 months to make sure that those areas that are defected grow with him, or he will need more surgery if they don't. So at 18 months, we started to notice a change that I really wasn't the one who accepted right away. His teachers in daycare were like, I think Mason needs birth to 3 services, but because he had been through so much, I was like, just give him some time. He'll get with it. And he didn't. So I agreed to allow him to get birth to 3 services, which was speech therapy and just to have someone work with him at his daycare. And one of the therapists said that she suggested that he move forward with getting tested for autism. And so from dealing with the heart condition, it had already embraced me to be okay with my child being disabled. And so I knew that I didn't want to be the parent in denial. So we went ahead and let him get diagnosed. It was hard for my husband more than it was for me. And so he was diagnosed at 18 months. And I feel like although congenital heart disease and surgeries are heavy, autism was heavier for me. And the way that it shows up is definitely heavier. So that means sleepless nights and the meltdowns when they first started happening could last for like 8 hours, sometimes on and off, or just crying. You got to turn all the lights off, turn all the sounds off, and kind of just let him settle, or sometimes just not knowing really what it is. And so the lack of communication and learning how to talk to him through sign language, it's all just a journey, and it's really difficult. And then you have other family members and friends, and you don't know everything about autism. So it's hard to educate them as much as you can. So you kind of just have to put your foot down and say, well, this is who he is. No, he's not potty trained. No, he doesn't drink out of a regular cup yet. No, he's not in his own bed. He's still in mine sometimes. And these things are okay because we're just trying to make it here.
Right. Let me just interject right here because this is kind of off script of what I had planned, but you mentioned something that Michael and I actually were just talking about that I think is kind of interesting. A lot of times when I am dealing with the autism conversation, it generally is based around women. And It's funny because I find that most of the time the men can be, I won't say all are, but
Mhm,
the men can be in denial. And it's really
mhm.
hard for them to accept initially um, that they have a child that is, you know, not your average. They're
Right.
not going to hit the average, charts that you would expect them to. So it's a little difficult for them. How did your husband fare and how is he doing now? Because how old is Mason now?
Mason's 4 years old now.
Okay, and you said he was diagnosed about 18 months.
Yeah.
Okay, so from 18 months to where we are now, have you seen your husband exhibit growth? I'm assuming because you're still married, which is a blessing in itself. Because you're still married and
Yeah.
still growing. So
Right.
just from your perspective and looking at your husband, how do you think he's doing?
He's doing good. He's actually a videographer, and he's gonna make a an autism documentary now. Yeah, and so he went further into research than I did. So I more so got all of my knowledge from other parents and finding out. I went into like support groups and connecting with people. He went into connecting with research and Googling and books. So so every time Mason would exhibit something new, he's like sending me an article about what this is or how it could show up for autism. Mason just started doing this thing where he's like blinking a lot. So he sent me an article about how that's connected to neurological disorders. So he's really on his P's and Q's. Sometimes I'm like, don't I have 5 children? Don't send me an article. But yeah.
Now that is hilarious to me because that sounds very parallel to who Michael and I are.
That's so funny.
That is comical to me because he does that all the time where something will happen and it could even be with our adult children now and he'll
Right.
see something and an article comes through my phone or an article comes through our family text thread and we're like, oh my gosh, really? You can just get off.
Yeah.
Will be okay. So I can totally relate to what you're saying by that. And I think it also is such a vantage point for you at this point, for your husband at this point, because there was no information, JR would have been 20 at this point.
Wow.
So we didn't have the knowledge or the accessibility to these resources that are out there now. And I have to just give a huge shout out to the Holly Rod Foundation, who I feel really kind of put autism out in the forefront and say, hey, we're dealing with something. I don't know who else is, but we want you to know we are, and maybe we can be that flagship, that champion to show everyone that if it comes your way, it's okay. So I just, I think it really takes, that old saying of it takes a village. It does. And it doesn't matter if you're in Houston and I'm in Florida, we can still connect. I can still support you. I can still encourage you where you are because I know where you are. I've been where you are. And it's a hard journey, but it's all about how you choose to walk it. It's all our perception. I'm sorry, I got off on a tangent right there. That just is really that. The husbands are also a conversation that I think is very pertinent that needs to happen.
Yeah. Well, like my wife was saying, initially, I was in denial. This is not something that we had encountered with our other children because we have 4 other children total. I have an older daughter. So we've never encountered this situation, and to have our last child, youngest, to go through the autism or be on the autism spectrum was different. And it was a little difficult for me as a dad too, having my son. I'm like, didn't make sense, He also suffered from pediatric seizures. So that was the beginning. And then he ended up getting diagnosed with the autism. So from a dad's perspective, yeah, initially it's a shock, but I got over it. I'm that kind of person, and he basically was with me a lot. So,
he was definitely his daddy's mini-me.
Yeah. So I learned to deal with him. We learned to deal with him, and the whole family and everything. And the kids were excellent. Even our dog that we had a little pit bull, and he helped out too. So yeah. So All right. So I do want to ask you a question here. How do you manage parenting your other children while providing additional support for Mason?
Yeah, it's really difficult. We recently, today's gonna be our first day of having a personal care assistant in the home. Because if I didn't, I wouldn't be able to be there for them. So they have other things that my youngest before Mason is 14 and he's, getting into basketball like his brothers. And, I don't want to continue to miss games because I can't bring Mason, or, like he had a game Saturday at 7:30 a.m. and I looked at him and I was like, there's no way, it's an hour away. I can't go there at 6:30 in the morning and think Mason's gonna not have a meltdown and sit in the bleachers that early. So he had to forfeit. So it's not okay. So we got a personal care assistant. So that way she could be here 4 hours a day in the afternoon when he comes home from school. And that way we can go on family dates without Mason and go out to eat and whatever we need to do without Mason there. Because it can be a strain, especially when he has meltdowns and they don't understand. And I'm like, don't just stand there, help the boy, but they don't get it. So that, they're fighting through embarrassment too, and, wanting to walk away because they only know what they knew from each other. So if it was a tantrum with the brother, then they'd be able to say, get up or come on, but this is not the same. So it's extremely difficult, but we're finding our way through. I try to keep them educated as well on meltdowns and what he needs. My 17-year-old told me that he's like, Mom, I'm gonna go to college and I'm gonna study neurological disorders because I want to be able to help autistic children. So
That's nice. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely a challenge that we've encountered too with our son. A lot of times we'd have family outings or something like that. And, if he wasn't feeling well, we knew he was in a certain type of mind space, and I'd stay back with him. So a lot of times my wife and our other children would go to family functions or events, and I'd keep him at home. If I knew that he's just not going to be able to function in somewhat normal capacity, as you want to say. So it can be challenging, and sometimes you miss out on some things. A lot of times we try to incorporate him and keep him involved in some of the activities so he didn't miss events. But I guess luckily we had family members and friends that were aware of his condition, and they were okay with it. So. But yeah, it's a very challenging situation.
All in all,
Yeah.
JR could flash a smile that will melt your heart. Like he could raise all kind of sand and you'd be like, I just cannot with you, little boy. And then he'd have a moment where he flashed that smile or come give you a hug, and you're just like, oh, it's all worth it. It's all worth it. It's okay. And it's almost like you're hitting a reset button. It's almost like you're starting over again. So it's like putting fuel in your gas tank so I can keep going now.
Yeah.
So we get that. It can be very difficult. And I would just suggest just keep doing what you're doing, especially with your older boys, because I've shared before, our children are some of the most empathetic people I know because of having their little brother.
Wow.
Our oldest son at one point worked in a disabled facility, and I was like, you're really choosing that? And he's like, Mom, he said, it's perfect for me. And I get it because I've worked with JR all his life. So I get them, like, it doesn't bother me, and I'm like, that's amazing. Like, what mother doesn't want to hear that you have the patience to deal with other human beings that can't fend for themselves. So that was definitely a proud mom moment.
Yeah. And our youngest daughter also, she graduated with an American Sign Language degree or certification. So I think that was in part of her, in memory of her brother as well. So
absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which is why she's featured on our Instagram, our social media in general, with giving a word of the week, which is amazing because for him, sign language early on was really good for him for communicating with us. So, I mean, that was a big, big help.
That's Mason. Sign language is a big help. Sometimes when I slack off on it and I'm just talking to him, I'll say, I'll remember. And I'm like, oh, you want more? And I'll sit there and wait. It's just like,
Mhm.
Yeah, I read,
Oh, yes, we remember that.
yes.
Wonderful. Well, let me ask you, what advice would you offer to parents who have recently become a part of the autism community?
Yeah, just take it one day at a time. One of the biggest pieces of advice that I had, I think I mentioned earlier, with connecting with other parents. So even if it's a Facebook group or an Instagram page or a local support group, the support is needed. You need somebody to hear, their story and what worked for them or what resources they had. I wouldn't know about anything that Mason has if it wasn't for another parent. The only thing that I knew that was offered was speech therapy. But ABA therapy, the incontinence supplies, the PCA that is coming from another parent, the disability waiver list, everything I found out from another parent who said, my child is receiving this, insurance pays for that. So, that's going to be vital to helping you to get through. And also don't forget to take those moments for yourself. Even if it's 5 minutes to just take a hot bath or drink your favorite tea or go get a pedicure or whatever you need to do to make you smile so that it balances out those heavy, heavy, heavy days.
Oh, now that's some good stuff right there. That's some good stuff. And I think sometimes when you're dealing with, the autism child, we feel like there are lack of resources. So I really appreciate you sharing those resources right there because they're critical. Again, like I said, it's been
almost two
two decades
Yeah.
since JR was diagnosed, and those resources weren't there for us when JR was diagnosed. It was pretty much, we had to do everything on our own. We had to figure it out. We learned how to develop a lot of patience and understanding, and really keeping that as a family unit. As Michael shared, our family community at the time we were in Connecticut was amazing. Amazing. Everyone knew that JR was different, but they never treated him as if he was different. And so if he was, we spoke earlier with someone that said they had a flight child where they just take off running, in our community center, if he took off, somebody knew who JR was in that building. Pretty much everybody knew who he was in that building. So it was a safe space, if you will. So I just appreciate you really sharing just those bit of resources and really helping parents understand that there is more to this than you just standing alone.
Yeah, because I can't even imagine being alone and doing this and never having the voice of another parent, because when he would have sleepless nights, I didn't know what to do. I was just like, by the fourth night, I was just crying and saying Jesus, because I was like exhausted and felt like I was going to lose my mind. But another parent said, get darker shades, make it all dark in the room. Maybe it's just a little bit of light that he can't take, or, somebody mentioned essential oils and getting lavender to run him a bath. And even as simple as melatonin, I didn't know what to do. So my moms told me.
Right. So you just mentioned, you didn't know what to do. You have become an advocate and a beautiful light in shedding your reality. You just mentioned that sometimes you would just cry. I recently saw one of your posts on Instagram where you're crying with Mason in the back seat because he had an earache and he couldn't tell you that, but you took him to the doctor and it was a non-cooperative day. Every autism parent knows what that means. A non-cooperative day means whatever you had planned is not going to happen that day. So you're sitting in the car and you're crying because you're like, I couldn't even get him what he needed because of the fact that he wasn't able to cooperate today. So with that being said, I just want to know more about your social media and what you do as an advocate, not only for Maison, but for moms of autistic children and for yourself. It's almost as if you are giving yourself therapy through Maison, which is, take your time. This is real, y'all. Maison is home. We had scheduled for him not to be home, but things happened. And mom mode had to kick in. So mom has Maison, and I told her we were fine with that as long as she was fine with that. So he's having a moment and she is tending to that. But Camille has her social media is Moments of Joy Podcast. Please check her out. She's amazing. You talk about inspirational, you talk about uplifting, you talking about a goal getter. She is out there and she's showing the true transparency of who she is as an autism mom. So Camille, can you share with us, how was that birthed? Was Moments of Joy before Maison? Did it come because of Maison? Did it come after Maison? Share that with us.
Yeah, it actually came before Maison. As obedience to God. And in 2022, I kind of shifted to being 2020. So all of 2020, I had been encouraging moms. We got on this app called Clubhouse, and we have the number one. I have the number one. I'm saying we because it's not me, it's all the moms, right? But we hold the number one parenting club on the app Clubhouse. So over 50,000 moms where we met throughout the year in conversation. So all of that content was already built for them because I knew that this was my heart and I needed it. So even that moment of the reel, that was only one of many times because we cry as parents, especially parents raising children with disabilities. It's moms, dads might not cry, but they might hold it, but they still feel the pain. My husband always says, I might not shed the tears, but seeing you cry, their hearts are touched in another way, and men are built differently. But I wanted the moms to know that they were not alone in that, I see them and I feel them. So in that moment when I was crying, after that, I called my mom to just pray for me because I was so like, can you just pray? I'm burnt at this moment. My husband had went out of town for work. So I was, and that was like day 3 of no sleep. He kept waking up at 3 a.m. So I was like, just done. Like, I need some help right now, mentally. Yep. So that's the reality. So in the midst of the tears, I was like, I'm going to let the parents see this and tell them they're not alone.
No, I was just gonna say, you may not see the dads cry, but they do. They have it, in their own moment of time, when they're away. So, but it happens, we feel it. We definitely feel it. Could you tell me, Camille, what is your favorite part of being Mason's mom?
Oh, my favorite part, I just feel like being his mom is an honor. That God just gifted me with this little guy. I think he has, because he's gonna be such an example when he gets older, right? That he has all these disabilities, but he's gonna do something amazing. I think he's gonna impact the world. As we take, content and we do video and we advocate, he'll have this to look back on. So just being little Mason's mom in general, I'm the most proud of.
Wonderful. Yeah.
That's beautiful. So tell us, Camille, what's next for you as Mason's mom? What's next for Maison? What do you see down the road? What are you hopeful for? What does the future look like for you all?
Oh, Mason's gonna be a singer. He loves music. He can hear a song one time and then you turn the song off and he's singing the song. And you would be like, oh, you only heard the song one time. Well, he's got the chorus, he's got the notes. And so he's gonna do something with music, whether it's singing or maybe he'll pick up an instrument, but that's his gift right now.
That is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Oh,
He's
yeah.
a really good singer.
That's so cool. Well, I cannot wait to see what album I will be purchasing for Mason.
Right.
I'm touching and agreeing with it because I am a music lover. JR was a music lover.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, honey, let me tell you, JR would not go to sleep at nap time unless he had a certain CD playing in the background. And
Wow.
I as well, it was a requirement anywhere he was going to sleep, he had to have that CD. Matter of fact, I think I'm gonna see if I can. I don't even know if I can burn it anymore. Like, do people burn
Wow.
CDs anymore?
What you talking about?
Because
The
it's
one that
not.
Kenny did?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I don't know if your wife, if my wife told you, but we are, my family's part Native American. So we actually we own a casino up in Connecticut.
Wow.
So when my wife talked about the community up in Connecticut, we're talking about the reservation. Um, so, and it's a very diverse tribe. So when you see our tribe, we have African Americans, we have Caucasians, we have Hispanics, we have Asians. They're all related through the assimilation process that started back in the 1600s. So
Is it the Pequots? Because I talked to her. Yeah, I went to that museum. Yep, I'm from Connecticut.
we are from Connecticut. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So we own Foxwoods, and so we have a large community up there, and they were very helpful as far as, like my wife was saying, with helping out with our son, and they knew him. So if something was going on, they're going to take care of him because that's family. So, but we, like my wife was saying, our son had a CD that a friend of the family had made, who was another Native American. His name was Kenny Merrick. He actually passed away. Yeah, Junior. He passed away a few years ago, and he made the CD he made a CD, and then we ended up getting the CD, and that was the only CD. That was the only music that our son would listen to go to sleep. It kind of calmed him and relaxed him. You know.
I believe it's basic. I think it's based on flute on that CD.
Yeah.
And it is the most peaceful sound you ever want to hear. So if I can find, matter of fact, I'll reach out to his wife, Faith, and see if we can get a copy of it, because I looked recently to see if I could download it. So I had it digitally because I still have his actual CD. But I'll reach out to Faith and see if we can get you a copy. We had Faith on last year for JR's birthday to talk about her relationship with her. She was our only caregiver for JR when we weren't, like, if we wanted a night out. She was the only one we trusted. So we get that. We know.
Yeah, we haven't found that yet, but yeah, I can't wait.
Yes, it's gonna give you that reset that you need. And I'm happy for you about that, and give you that time to connect again, and not just for yourself, but for your family as well, that your other children won't feel like they're being overlooked, I guess I would say, which they really aren't. I know you're a great mom because I see all that you exude in life when you come alive on social media. So I just want to thank you so much again. We want to thank you so much again for taking the time to meet with us, to really be able to shed a light for others, to become another resource for others, to be able to see that it is real, you're not alone, and it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to talk about it. So thank you so much. Please give Mason a big hug.
I will. Yes, he's being good. He's just sitting there looking.
Well, thank you so much again, Camille. We will put your information in the link below so that everybody can be able to follow you and see what it is that you and Mason are up to now.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for reaching out. You made our week, our holiday. You took a lot of pressure off, because, you know, it may look one way on social media, but you never know what a family is dealing with financially. So I greatly appreciate it from you and my husband.
Amen. No, and I just have to say, I'm ever so grateful for our donors that have really kicked in this year to allow us to be able to adopt more children. I feel sometimes, I'll be honest with you, mom to mom moment, I feel sometimes that our number is so small. We're still growing. This is our second year doing a Sunshine's Christmas, our third year in operations for our nonprofit. But I'm like, well, it's just 8 kids, but I feel like we have a higher denomination. It's not that we're giving one gift to every child. We are basically trying to lighten the burden for the parent to say, we've got this one. Whatever else you got to do, you go ahead and do that. But we'll take care of this one so that you can focus on everyone else. So I'm glad that you're appreciative of it. We are excited that Mason has now been a recipient. He is so adorable. And again, Camille, thank you so much. We greatly appreciate you.
Thank you.